Good morning, ladies. Happy Friday. I hope this message finds you well. It is Friday. Been up for about an hour now. Got some things done. The frozen strawberry yogurt bark is complete, so I put that inside little baggies. I appreciate everybody's messages. Yeah, it's been busy. Standing up for 5 hours, give or take, between the prepping of all of the salads and then picking with Scarlett. It was a lot. However, it's going to save me a tremendous amount of time throughout this week because I have a lot. I have business meetings. I have customer dinner event things going on this week. So it's just, I have to be sure I'm eating as well as the family and not just eat crap. And I'm tired of spending money and wasting money outside when the money you get outside for the food you get outside isn't even worth all of it half the time. So it is all good. I used to do school for 2.5 years, night shift. It's college before online courses was an actual thing, from 2008 to 2010, with a 1-year-old at home. So, I mean, I know these seasons, I don't care for them, but every season comes rewards. So you guys are absolutely right, sowing the seed, and the rest will come soon. However, we are going to hop on 1 Kings chapter 6 and 7 today. We'll be going over how Solomon builds the temple and the other units that God has asked them to do. And it's pretty much how this temple picture here, we're going to be talking about how that's set up. So verse 1 goes like this. And it came to pass in the 418th year from the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. Now the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits, its width 20, and its height 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with beveled frames. Against the wall of the temple he built chambers all around, against the walls of the temple and all around the sanctuary and in the inner sanctuary. Thus he made side chambers all around it. Verse 6, the lowest chamber was 5 cubits wide, the middle was 6 cubits wide, and the third was 7 cubits wide, for he made narrow ledges around the outside of the temple, so that the support beams would not be fastened into the walls of the temple. And the temple, when it was being built, was built with stone finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the temple while it was being built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up by the stairs to the middle story, and from the middle to the third. So he built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar, and he built side chambers against the entire temple, each 5 cubits high. They were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you when I spoke to your father David. Verse 13, and I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the temple and finished it, and he built the inside walls of the temple with cedar boards. From the floor of the temple to the ceiling he paneled the inside with wood, and he covered the floor of the temple with planks of cypress. Verse 16, then he built the 20-cubit room at the rear of the temple from floor to ceiling. Come in, my love. With cedar boards. He built it inside as the inner sanctuary, as the most holy place. Love you. And in front of it, the temple sanctuary was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with ornamental buds and open flowers. All with cedar, there was no stone to be seen. Verse 19, and he prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. He overlaid it with pure gold and overlaid the altar of the cedar. So Solomon overlaid the inside of the temple with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. The whole temple he overlaid with gold until he had finished all the temple. Also he overlaid with gold the entire altar that was by the inner sanctuary. Inside the inner sanctuary he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. Verse 24, one wing of the cherub was 5 cubits, and the other wing of the cherub 5 cubits, 10 cubits from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both cherubim were of the same size and shape. The height of the one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was the other cherub. When he set the cherub inside the inner room, and cherubim, I'm sorry, I'm probably even pronouncing that incorrectly. Then he set the cherubim inside the inner room, and they stretched out the wings of the cherubim so that the wing of the one touched one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall. And their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. Also he overlaid the cherubim with gold. Then he carved all the walls of the temple all around, both the inner and outer sanctuaries, with carved figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. And the floor of the temple he overlaid with gold, both the inner and outer sanctuaries. For the entrance of the inner sanctuary he made doors of olive wood. And the lintel and doorposts were 1/5 of the wall. The 2 doors were of olive wood, and he carved on them figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. And he spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. So for the door of the sanctuary he also made doorposts of olive wood, 1/4 of the wall. And 2 doors were of cypress wood. 2 panels compromised one folding door, and 2 panels compromised the other folding door. Then he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them, and overlaid them with gold applied evenly on the carved wood work. Verse 36, and he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year of the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Zib. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its details and according to all its plans. So he was 7 years in building it. We are in chapter 7. Solomon's going to be talking about other buildings, his craftsmen, the bronze pillars for the temple. Verse 1 goes like this. But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house. So he finished all his house. He also built the house at the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, with 4 rows of cedar pillars and cedar beams on the pillars. And it was paneled with cedar above the beams that were on 45 pillars, 15 to a row. There were windows with beveled frames in 3 rows, and the window was opposite window in 3 tiers. And all the doorways and doorposts had rectangular frames, and the window was opposite window in 3 tiers. He also made the hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, and its width 30 cubits. And in front of them was a portico with pillars, and a canopy was in front of them. Then he made a hall for the throne, the hall of judgment, where he might judge, and it was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. And the house where he dwelt had another court inside the hall, of like workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as a wife. All these were of costly stones cut to size, trimmed with saws, inside out from the foundation to the eaves, and also on the outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, large stones, some 10 cubits and some 8 cubits, and above were costly stones hewn to size in cedar wood. The great court was enclosed with 3 rows of hewn stones and a row of cedar beams. So were the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the temple. Verse 13, now King Solomon sent and brought up Hiram from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was the man of Tyre, a bronze worker. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to King Solomon and did all his work. And he cast 2 pillars of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of each. Then he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the tops of the pillars. The height of one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. He made a lattice network with wreaths of chain work, for the capitals were on top of the pillars, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other capital. So he made the pillars and 2 rows of pomegranates above the network all around to cover the capitals that were on top, and thus he did for the other capital. The capitals which were on top of the pillars in the hall were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. The capitals on the 2 pillars also had pomegranates above by the convex surface, which was next to the network, and there were 200 such pomegranates in rows on each of the capitals all around. Then he set up his pillars by the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he sent it up the pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. The tops of the pillars were in the shapes of lilies, so the work of the pillars were finished. Verse 23, and he made the sea of cast bronze, 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was completely round. Its height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits measured its circumference. Below its brim were ornamental buds encircling it all around, 10 to a cubit, and all the way around the sea. The ornamental buds were cast in 2 rows. When it was cast, it stood on 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking towards the south, and 3 looking towards the east. The sea was set upon them, and all their back parts pointed inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was shaped like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It contained 2,000 baths. Verse 27, he also made 10 carts of bronze. 4 cubits was the length of each cart, 4 cubits in its width, and 3 cubits in its height. And this was the design of the carts. They had panels, and the panels were between the frames, and on the panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames was a pedestal on top. Below the lions and oxen were wreaths of plated work. Every cart had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the laver were supports of cast bronze beside each wreath. Its opening inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit in diameter, and the opening was round, shaped like a pedestal, 1.5 cubits in outside diameter. And also on the opening were engravings, but the panels were square, not round. Under the panels were 4 wheels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the cart. The height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. The workmanship of the wheels was like the workmanship of a chariot wheel. Their axle pins, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all of cast bronze. And there were 4 supporters at the 4 corners of each cart. Its supports were part of the cart itself. On the top of the cart, at the height of 0.5 cubit, it was perfectly round. And on the top of the cart, its flanges and its panels were of the same casting. On the plates of its flanges and on its panels, he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, wherever there was a clear space on each, with wreaths all around. Thus he made the 10 carts. All of them were of the same mold, 1 measure, and 1 shape. Verse 38, then he made 10 lavers of bronze. Each laver contained 40 baths, and each laver was 4 cubits. On each of the 10 carts was a laver. And he put 5 carts on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. He set the sea on the right side of the house toward the southeast. Verse 40, Hiram made the levers and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing all of the work that he was to do for King Solomon for the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on the top of the 2 pillars, the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals which were on top of the pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the pillars. The 10 carts and the 10 levers on the carts, 1 sea, and 12 oxen under the sea, the pots, the shovels, and the bowls. All the articles which Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of burnished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan, the king had cast them in clay molds between Succoth and Zeratin. And Solomon did not weigh all the articles because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Thus Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord, the altar of the gold and the table of gold, on which the showbread, the lampstands of which was the showbread, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left in front of their inner sanctuary, with the flowers and the lamps and the wick trimmers of gold. Verse 50, the basins, the trimmers, the bowls, the ladles, and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner room, the most holy place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple. So all of the work that King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in things which his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. And that is all for today's Bible study, ladies. Solomon's getting his little, getting his house in order. The saying goes, you have your house in order, things flow a lot easier. And little by little, as I'm trying to do it, I'm telling you it does. But yeah, I know. It's a lot of work. And back in the day, let's be honest, how the heck did they do it? How did they do the cooking, the cleaning, the this, that, the building, with everything else? Mind you, there was no playpens. There was no car seats. There were no high chairs. There was no anywhere to hold your kid to do something while you had to do the work of the field. Hence why they worked so young and they were out there and all that. But it's all good. It is all good. All of this is for a purpose. So let's have an awesome day. Let's have an awesome weekend. If you need prayer, send me a message. Thank you for reaching out. I am doing great. Let's keep it moving. Stay blessed.